Hello and welcome to this episode of Demystified as we explore home cooking in a modern world. Hello, I'm Linda and I'm here with my friend Paul. Hello, Paul.
Well, we're not here.
Well, we're not
You're
here.
there. I'm
there.
here. I'm here for me here, and you're there for
Oh,
there.
it's
Here,
funny,
you,
isn't it?
whatever.
It is funny. I know, and it's funny. It's kind of weird. It's kind of weird, I must say. It doesn't feel like a work day yet, properly.
Yeah, I suppose.
You're finding? It's weird.
Sorry?
Is that what you're finding? It doesn't feel like a weekday at the moment because it's kind of weird.
No, my days are starting pretty early, and they feel like a regular.
Okay.
Today felt like a Monday, so. But it is what it is.
Well, given it's Tuesday, I guess it's okay. So today, food. Food cuisine types, Italian.
Yeah, so we thought we'd come back to.
Yes.
Yeah, we got sidetracked, so we thought we'd come back to it a little bit.
Right.
And we thought, let's talk Italian. Not that I'm the world's greatest expert on Italian, but nonetheless, why not? And how it relates to, probably your steam oven and stuff like that. Because there's a few classic examples that we've done over time, which actually worked really well with the steam oven.
Okay.
Do you remember any of them, Linda?
I was going to say I know that it was a revelation when we steamed the potatoes, and they weren't quite so mushy and wet when we made gnocchi.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's not a bad point. Actually, I forgot about that myself.
Oh, and your introduction to me of a ricer and how I love it. I use it for so many things. So that was also, but that's not near the steam oven, but it was just, they go hand in hand for me. So
yeah,
I remember that. I remember the potatoes coming out quite dry and not too wet, which was nice for the gnocchi.
Yeah. So we've done, and although I have tested theories on doing gnocchi, actually once the gnocchi's made, then steaming the dumplings themselves, which can be done, I still maintain that it's better done in a pot of boiling water. But you can do it, certainly. So you can, once your gnocchi's made, you can put them on your perforator tray and steam the gnocchi themselves. It's either here nor there, really, I suppose. But one of the classic ones which I revisit reasonably often, and it's probably not the sort of done thing these days, because veal's not super popular or not something that people go and eat often. But one that I was really happy with, which we did quite a long time ago, was vitella tonato. Do you remember that?
Oh, yes, I do remember that.
Yeah, that's a very classic Italian dish, like really, really classic, and it's a combination of very different ingredients that you wouldn't think would go together. One being tuna and the other being veal. And traditionally, the veal was poached in like a court bouillon, so like a stock of vinegar, peppercorns, all sorts of stuff. It's almost like a vegetable stock with a little bit more vinegar in it, and it's quite precise. You have to be quite precise with the poaching method because it can overcook really easily. And given you're working with something like veal fillet, which has got almost no fat, you can make it tough. And then it's paired with essentially a tuna mayonnaise, and it's traditionally made using tin tuna. So we took that idea and then applied that to steam, and rather than poach our veal fillet, we steamed it. And that's really, really interesting dish for people to give a go. It's a classic Italian dish, and it works out beautifully using your steam oven. So just getting your veal fillet and steaming it, letting it cool, because it's served cold, which is another thing which might be a bit different for people. And you just make a very simple mayonnaise with tuna and mayonnaise, and I think we put some capers in there. I can't remember. But yeah, there's some classic accompaniments to it, and it's really worth giving a go. So that's one sort of Italian thing that we've done. One we haven't done, which I've been promising for years and years and years, but I'm a bit hesitant of doing, is a lasagna. But we've done various pasta bakes, which you wouldn't say are Italian as such. They're probably more an Australian thing, really. But lasagnas, if you look at what everyone else does with a combi steam oven, lasagnas are a common thing in a combi steam oven, because when they're baked, we use steam as well. And everyone's had, I think, most people, except for any of our Italian friends listening, but most people have had a lasagna occasionally where it's dry, because even though they're quite, for want of a better term, saucy, you've got a white sauce, you've got a bolognese sauce, there's a lot of sauce. The whole baking process removes some of that moisture, and they can become quite dry. So quite often combi steam ovens are employed in the baking of a lasagna to stop that from happening, so they don't dry it out as much. So that's another really good one, because you still get the colour on top. And there's a lot to be said about lasagnas and what's the right way, which is why I've sort of avoided it for a long time. I'm very much a make your own pasta type of person, and the lasagna really for me is more about the multiple layers of pasta. I'm not talking 4, I'm talking more like 10 to 15. So very minimal amount of sauce, but lots of pasta. That's my understanding of what a traditional lasagna is, but we'll give that a go at some stage. But we have done lots of...
Before you go on, I know I asked you this before in another episode, and I was worried that in a combi steam oven you wouldn't get the crunchy bits that are so important on lasagna or on other pasta bakes as well. And I know you explained fully that we would, because that's a very important part of the cooking, are those edgy, crunchy bits that are just so tasty. Anyway.
Yeah, so one of the most famous chefs in the world, if not the best, I think his restaurant was voted the best restaurant in the world for many consecutive years. Massimo Bottura, I think his name is. He actually does a dish which is called the crunchy bit of lasagna. So it's the burnt corner, and it's an actual dish.
He's in Spain, isn't he? Is he in Spain, or is that in Italy?
No, he's in Italy.
Okay.
He lives in, I think the restaurant's in Emilia Romagna, which is the home of Reggiano Parmesan cheese. So everything he does is Parmesan and balsamic vinegar and all that sort of stuff. But he actually has created a dish which is the crunchy bit of lasagna. It's not a lasagna, it's the crunchy bit of lasagna, and it's got the essence of that flavor. But you got to remember too, with those sorts of things, and when you're after those bits, I know exactly what you're talking about. Those sort of the cooked corners where they've got a little bit more cooked, and it's, the cheese is fractionally darker and everything's got a little bit more color. A lot of that, and a lot of those, and this comes back to an email I recently got too, is although we're using steam quite often, and we use steam to bake a lasagna, quite often a lot of this comes down to temperature. So it's not just one thing. So by adding steam to the cook in a lasagna isn't going to prevent that from happening when we're working with temperature as well. So, temperature is a big dictator in what will eventually happen to your food. What steam does is retain moisture to a degree. It will speed up the cooking process to a degree, and temperature will, but temperature also plays a bigger part in whether those things happen throughout the cook. So the best example, and we've said this before, is bread. Is baking a loaf of bread and seeing that just because we're adding steam or cooking with steam throughout the cycle doesn't make the bread soggy. So the same can be said for lasagna, but your temperature plays a big part in it as well. But the other thing that I've done quite a bit of, and it's probably a new one for you, Linda. We went down the uh, really into some depth, actually, the polenta sort of
Oh, yeah.
side of things, and using our steam oven to now, although traditional not. It is an instant polenta, and it's not a traditional method. And we had some discussions with someone who's a way better Italian chef than I am, Robert Castellani, who was on a previous podcast. You know, he was talking about those sort of crunchy, stuck-on bits that eventually get folded through the polenta that are his childhood memory, whereas our method sort of avoids doing that. You know, is there a right or wrong way? Yeah, I don't know. I'm not a traditionalist when it comes to Italian cuisine like that. And everything's down to interpretation to a degree. But from that, I then started getting into doing a lot more sort of ragouts. So we've done quite a few different sort of, I think we did a lamb ragout. We've done quite a few of those different sort of ragouts and bases. And osso buco we've also done, which is another classic sort of Italian preparation. That's, you know, veal shin or beef shin braised in a tomato-based sauce, finished with gremolata, which is a classic sort of cleaner upperer, if that makes sense. It cleans up the flavour of things a little bit. So very much based around the simplistic view of Italian cuisine, which is just get some really good. And when you talk Italian, they always talk about really good quality ingredients at the right time of year, and they probably embrace that more so than a lot of other cuisines. But you know, you get something like a piece of osso buco, which is, you know, a piece of shin, really tough meat. You get some really good quality tomatoes, a little bit of stock, and you make a really good gremolata. You've got the basis for what is a good meal on its own. Add some polenta, it becomes an entire dinner. Or, you know, you can break apart the osso buco itself. It becomes a ragu for a pasta. It can be anything. You know, that could become your filling for your lasagna, for a cannelloni, for anything like that. So, you know, like we say, a lot of the recipes on our site are guidelines, and it gives you the base level recipe, but it doesn't mean you can't expand on it. And that's why the parts of Italian cuisine that I really enjoy are taking something like a traditional preparation like that and being able to do something else with it. So we can turn what is a classic osso buco into, you know, a ragu for a pasta, although it's got the osso buco traits as far as the preparation of tomato, onion, garlic, gremolata, you know, rather than just serve that as a big hunk of veal shin, why not break it down and throw it through a nice thick pappardelle pasta, and you've got an entirely different dish. So we've done quite a bit, actually, now that I sort of think back on it. We did biscotti as well, which is that sort of classic, really crispy biscuit. You know, we've done quite a few. I mean, I don't know how we'd ever go about defining a singular cuisine type that we ever focus in on. But yeah, if people trawl through the website, you notice, and that's why we try and keep the naming of things semi-traditional as well. So when we name a dish that we've done on the website, it's either just the ingredients or the traditional name of the dish. So if you search for Teletonato on the website, it'll come up, because it's as close to what the traditional means. And of course, the classic of all classics is risotto. And we've done, you know, at least half a dozen different risottos, using the combi steam oven as sort of our tool to get us through that middle part of the cooking of the risotto. It's got to be said, though, that I'm still at times wonder if that was the right direction to go. We did a lot of research into looking at how everyone else was doing their risottos in combi steam ovens across all brands and manufacturers and stuff like that. And there was a lot of, let's pile all the ingredients into a tray, into a steamer, and we'll just throw it in the oven. And I wasn't getting the impression that was turning out to be something that I would really want to eat. So we kind of did a bit of a midway thing where we started quite traditionally by, you know, making our sofrito, so our onions, and if you want celery, garlic, carrot, whatever it is your starting point is. Most of the time mine's onion and garlic, and then adding our rice and cooking our rice out just over dry heat until the grains turn opaque, and our wine, and we reduce that. This is all on the stovetop. And then the difference being is we add all of our stock in one hit into the oven. It's generally about 14 minutes, and then we remove it, and we might add a little bit more stock on the stovetop and give it a bit of a stir to get some of that starch moving and going. And so it's a sort of half traditional, half not traditional way. And it actually, Linda, you're probably a better judge than me, but it actually works out really well. You kind of get that whole sort of creaminess thing happening from a traditional risotto, but you haven't had that. So it's more probably a convenience thing. And I'm sure there's, if there's any traditional Italian listeners out there, they would hate the idea of doing it, because half the beauty in a risotto is the patience and time you spend and the romance of making it. But we don't always have that time. But we've certainly covered quite a bit as far as Italian cuisine goes, I think. I don't know, Linda, what do you think?
I do think that with the polenta and the risotto, I do like the way that you're not tied to the stovetop and you get a great product at the end. So you can start off, cooking it in a traditional sense, and then by using the steam oven, it frees you up. You know that it's going to work. You're not going to have it overcook and burn and stick to the bottom and ruin. And that gives you time to do the other things in your meal that you need to prepare for, or have a glass of wine.
Which is very Italian while you're cooking.
Also very Italian. Well, the night that very recently we were allowed a very small window of having people over, and my nephew and his fiancée came over, and I made osso buco with polenta. And
so there you go. I didn't even know that.
It was then that I made the polenta when I didn't realise I had the thick grain, and I needed to just keep adding water to loosen it up. But the taste was amazing. And I should have made double the quantity, because I almost felt like giving them mine, because they were still looking for more, because it's one of those meals that you don't make very often. And when you do, it's great comfort. It's got such great flavour, and it's really easy. If I'm catching up with people, I want to have a meal. I want to prepare a meal that is super tasty, but also doesn't tie me into the kitchen where I can't contribute to the conversation and catch up. So
yeah,
I love the fact that risotto I can put into the steam oven. I know how long it's going to take. I know exactly that 14 minutes for the sort of cooking for two that it gives me. In the middle, I can do other things. And with the polenta, it gives me that hour that I can, get everything else ready. And I really appreciate it.
And what I find that I'm quite often doing is, I'll do extra polenta, and then while it's still hot, I'll set it into a container so I can, pan fry a bit of it the next day for dinner. And even with, if I'm going to the effort of making a risotto, I'll do the same thing where I'll make extra. And I think I've done various versions of arancini as well. So we take the arancini, we do make a risotto, might add some flavouring to it. Could be anything. We might have had some osso buco, which we had left over. Might have added some ragu to the rice. So we've made osso buco one night. We've had a little bit of ragu left over, a little bit of that left over. We've made risotto. We've had some of that left over. We've combined the two things. So now we've got essentially a meat-based arancini. And as we know, great use of your combi steam oven is for crumbed foods. So you can whip up some arancini, and there's no deep frying. So to a degree, it's healthier. And there's another sort of classic Italian preparation, taking something simple like rice. If you really want to, what you can actually do is even just to add a little bit more texture when you go to crumb your arancini, mix some Parmesan cheese and some polenta in with your breadcrumbs. So you make kind of a blend, and then you can bake that, because you can, as long as it's fine grain polenta, and that'll give you a nice yellow color. to the outside of your arancini too.
Oh, okay.
I quite often dust fresh squid or calamari in a mixture of semolina and polenta as well. Just to give it a bit colour, and it gives you a bit of a crunch, a little bit of a crunch. I mean, they're very small grains. But I think we feel like, I'm not, like I say, I'm not an expert in Italian cuisine. You and I both spent time in Italy together. That was a few years ago now. And most of the time it was just give us a massive plate of prosciutto and some,
yeah, exactly.
bowl of pasta and a glass of wine, and we'll just shut up.
Yeah, buffalo.
Yeah, buffalo mozzarella.
Man.
And then that was kind of, and some fresh tomatoes, and that was all we needed. So, but again, the bread baking, we haven't done a proper ciabatta, but that's something we'll visit. But pizzas, of course, we've cooked pizza as well, which is a classic. I mean, we've only done one pizza, which is a very classic sort of margherita style pizza in the combi steam oven. I've got to say that if you do have an induction cooktop, that's a great way to do your pizza. Is go from, you can start your crust on a tray, like a teppanyaki plate, as long as it's removable, on your induction cooktop, so you get that nice crust underneath, and then you transfer that to your combi steam oven for baking. That's a real winner. We might do that when we get back into the studio.
And we can go back into the cooking with steam kitchen. Wow.
Yes.
One day.
But there's lots of fish dishes because they're right on the Mediterranean as well, but we haven't really delved really into focusing on cooking Italian cuisine. A lot of the stuff that we talked about in our French episode was because that's really revolved around classic technique. So, it's, braising, which again is Italian as well, to doing things like confit and understanding the basis of a cassoulet and all those sorts of things. But if you just shift a few ingredients, there's no reason why one of your favourite dishes, the snapper with leeks and mustard, that's probably leaning towards French because of the mustard and a few of the other things. But by changing a few ingredients and adding a courgette or zucchini and a few tomatoes and different herbs, there's no reason why you couldn't call that an Italian dish at all. So, have a look at what's there, and you can certainly shift the ingredients a little bit, or as the term of the moment is, pivot. Pivot ingredients.
Oh dear.
If that is even possible. Yeah, well, I've got a bit of cabin fever. But then, what is seen as maybe a French dish, you transfer into something Italian. Italian just doesn't have to mean pasta and risotto or pizza, No,
and it's
a lot of
way
fish.
Yeah,
it's very, very broad and very hard to cover. And a lot of it too, and I think the best part of Italian cuisine is what we just talked about, is the prosciutto, the fresh tomatoes, the buffalo mozzarella, the basil,
Yeah.
You really don't need a steam oven for that. Like, it's sit there and eat it. The only thing you could probably add to it is some really good bread and really good olive oil. And as you know, like, I'm a massive fan of using olive oil as, a dressing for everything. And that's probably an Italian sort of throwback, because the French do it to a degree, but not to the same degree. But yeah, we've sort of explored a little bit of Italian cuisine. But if anyone out there's got any suggestions about something they'd like us to cook, send us some.
Well, I'm actually making a pasta bake tonight. We had some chicken fillets that we had planned to use over the weekend and didn't, and I didn't want to put them in the freezer. I wanted to cook up something, so we got a couple of leeks, and I'm thinking of doing a chicken and leek. And then we've also got, I think, some peas and a little bit of bacon left over. So I'm thinking of putting all those in and adding some cheese sauce, a cheesy kind of.
Yeah, why not? Yeah. And you wouldn't say that.
And,
you wouldn't say that Italian.
It's not
but
Italian,
you wouldn't say it.
But it's certainly, I think, I'm looking. Well, I call it the comfort food in the same way I see a lot of Italian cooking, Italian food. That lovely, to me, lasagna, those sort of hearty meals like that.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
For feeding a lot of people.
And the other thing we probably need to explore a little bit more too is some of the wilder, gamier type things, because quite often you'll find that in Italian food. You'll get venison depending on where you are. Rabbit is certainly one that's pretty common. Wild boar is another, which I think we've done a wild boar dish or two.
Very big in Spain as well, wild boar.
Yeah, so we haven't not explored it, but yeah, the problem that I have half the time is there's so many ingredients and there's so many things we could do. I actually flummox myself sometimes and go, okay, stop overthinking it. Just take something simple. So, even making a cannoli or something like that we haven't done, which we should do.
Oh, I absolutely. But can we wait until we can see you? Because I'd hate to. There are some things, Paul, I always like it when we can taste test for you. And I just think, there are some things like cannoli that you need to make when there's an audience. Just because.
Yeah, ulterior motives, people.
Totally. What do you think cooking with steam's all about, baby? It's just, But
it's not about you find people listening using the website,
learning how to
using the tools that we're building.
Yeah.
It's about Linda what she wants. Exactly. Let's be honest.
Exactly right. That's what this is all a cunning plan, Paul, to get you to cook for me more often. You know that, don't you?
Yeah.
5 years in.
Yeah. And a lot of people have also talked about, and I've seen this before too, and I've seen it in a lot of manuals. I mean, unfortunately, I spend a lot of my time reading user guides and user manuals, particularly around steam. And I've seen a lot of people cook their dried pasta, and we've done pasta in the steam oven, but done fresh pasta. Cook dried pasta in their steam oven. So basically, you fill a tray with water, throw your dry pasta in, and cook it in your steam oven. So while a lot of these things are possible, just because you've got and I've said this before, just because you've got the appliance doesn't mean you should always use it. I actually don't think it works out any better. And if you're not making it better, then why do it? And I actually struggle to find the reasoning behind it, because I don't think you get that little bit of starch that's comes out of pasta, which is if you don't stir your pasta when you put it in your pot of boiling water, it sticks together and it holds together. And I think that's what happens when you try and steam dried pasta. So maybe that's, if you look in your manuals or your manufacturer, that's one to maybe watch out for.
Yeah, it seems a bit counterintuitive, doesn't it? Because it's just,
I know, but I mean, everyone's trying to find the single standalone purpose for the appliance that does every single job. But that's not one I'd sort of embrace.
Look, you know how I love my combi steam oven, but I don't see it replacing other processes.
A pot of boiling water for cooking pasta.
No, I don't see it doing that. But it can do a lot of things, and it can do them really well, but just not that. Maybe that.
Yeah.
But
that's about sort of my view on Italian and what we've done so far, but I'm really open to suggestions. So if anyone's got any suggestions, info@cookingwithsteam.com, and we'll jump on there and cook up some more Italian-based food. But we don't really focus in on any one cuisine type, but we don't mind talking about them every now and again.
Yeah, and I think it gets us inspired to now that we're home cooking. Certainly, following something that you and I talked about last week, is why I thought, I'll just get a leek. Well, when I say we, Dougie does the shopping, so Dougie brought home a couple of leeks, and we just thought, okay, this is going to be a nice. It's cold. It's turning colder here now, so good time for a pasta bake. And then there's leftovers. Yay! They're always as fun.
Yeah, good.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that, and for everybody out there, happy cooking, and stay well, stay safe, and enjoy. Enjoy whatever you are cooking. Enjoy.
Yeah, enjoy the lockdown if you are in Victoria. Enjoy it.
Yes, and everywhere else. Bye, everybody. Bye.
See you later. Bye.
Thanks for listening to this podcast as we explore home cooking in a modern world. We'd love you to subscribe, and for more information, please go to our website, cookingwithsteam.com.